And let's go down south to the Bayou. Les Miles, entering his 5th year. Disappointing year last year. Everybody counting them out against Georgia Tech in the Chick-fil-A Bowl, the Peach Bowl. But they just ran through Paul Johnson's squad over there. They ended up the season 8-5 after disappointing. They were also about to lose to Troy. They were down about 31-3 or something like that, and they come back to win about 40-30-1 with a huge rally in the 4th quarter. Jordan Jefferson, they took the red shirt off of him. This is the guy who helped them dominate Georgia Tech. Got those guys out the door, Andrew Hatch and Jarrett Lee. They're not going to see the playing time because they bring in a highly touted athlete freshman, Russell Shepard, and Charles Scott, the first-team SEC, is going to help them out in the backfield.
Those two guys, Shepard and Jordan Jefferson, they're way better than the quarterbacks that we saw last year. Hatch has already transferred back to Harvard, and Lee is probably never going to see the field again unless it's on extra points.
He went back to Harvard?
Back to Harvard. He smartened up. The Harvard education is a good thing. But I like Les Miles. I like his running backs. He has Charles Scott, 1,200-yard rusher. Keelan Williams is an awesome prospect that could start for a lot of teams in the country. And one person to watch this year, Richard Murphy, running back, 6'1", 200 pounds. Reminds me a lot of Ricky Waters. It's his smooth running style. Look for him to get a lot of playing time as well, too. So they have 3 good running backs. That's going to help ease the transition for Jefferson to come in his full season of starting.
And of course the burner, I don't know if you want to play him at running back, Trindon Holiday.
Got to put him on the field somewhere.
Got to get him on the field. Wide receiver, running back, you count him as a running back. Also receiver, loaded, Brandon LaFell. This guy, NFL scouts are eyeing this guy. He's staying there. Terrence Tolliver, bringing the #1 wide receiver, Ruben Randall, and they get the 2nd-team SEC all-tight end back, Richard Dixon.
Ruben Randall is the top receiver coming out this year, and LSU was able to snag him. That's an awesome pickup. LaFell had 8 touchdowns last season. He's going to be the favorite target of Jefferson. I like their receivers now. Last year they were question marks. This year they could be a strength.
When you talk about Ruben Randall, you got to think Julio Jones and A.J. Green last year, of course, terrific freshmen. Now they're sophomores, of course. Ruben Randall has potential like that. Defensive side of the ball, and this is where it's going to make or break the Bayou Bengals. The schedule aside, their schedule, we'll talk about that in a second, but the defensive line, everybody down the defensive line, they get first-team SEC defensive end Raheem Alem back. This guy was like a backup for a couple of years, but he's a stud, and Al Woods at defensive tackle. And they bring in a boatload of defensive linemen, Chris Davenport, Sam Montgomery, Hakeem Nicks, Mike Brockers. They also bring in a true freshman, Barkevius Mingo, so they're trying to get that defense to stop the run, the front 7.
Raheem Alem had 8 sacks last season. I love his game. I remember him in high school. He was a terror at St. Augustine High School in New Orleans. Real good guy, real good player coming off that end. And Al Woods, a big run stuff at the defensive tackle position. I love the defensive line at LSU. Even though they lose Tyson Jackson last year to the NFL draft, I do love the fact that they have a good defensive line. And that's the thing. They gave up 24 points a game. That was a big question. That concerned me. How are they going to play? They got safety Chad Jones, who is a phenomenal talent. So if they can improve, if they can get that down to 19 points a game, this could be a special year in Baton Rouge.
A secondary player I love, Patrick Peterson, shutdown corner, only a sophomore. I think he's going to step up. Jai Eugene, you mentioned Chad Jones. They're bringing another highly touted, one of the best D-backs coming in, Craig Loston. So he's going to try to help that secondary also. And in November, let's talk about the schedule. In November, they got Alabama away and Mississippi away. And they open up at Washington, which should be a blowout for LSU, but in SEC play, it's going to be interesting how they handle the month of November.
They got to go to Georgia, Ole Miss, and Bama. Tough 3-game slate.
Arkansas, Bobby Petrino in his 2nd year, 18 starters return from a 5-7 squad, and he gets his gem, the transfer from Michigan, Ryan Mallett, probably one of the best pro prospects as a quarterback in the nation. He's going to start for them after sitting out a year. The diminutive but great Michael Smith, 5'7", 170, 180, but he's a burner. He was 2nd-team SEC. London Crawford, and of course the tight end who was 1st-team SEC, DJ Williams.
DJ Williams is their leading receiver, is one of the best tight ends in the country. Your guy, Ryan Mallett. You like Ryan Mallett. I'm interested to see him play this year in the SEC. 6'7", 240, big guy, big arm. Petrino loves those big quarterbacks. So they should be okay. With Michael Smith, that guy, despite his size, is blazing fast and has vision. And with those two attributes, that's a deadly combination, especially in the SEC.
Malik could fit it in those windows. Mitch Preacher is second team SEC. I mean, can this offensive line get any worse? They lost Luigi's, their interior offensive lineman, so they need to step up in the offensive line. I don't think it can get any worse than it was the last couple of years.
No, you can once you rock bottom, you can only go up. So if they can improve, the good thing about it, nobody wants to be the GOAT, so they have to improve. I'm pretty sure those guys are going to improve this year because you got to think about the offense they run. They want to pass the ball, and with Mallett coming in, the big quarterback, they have 4 of the top receivers returning. So they need that offensive line to show up this Saturday.
Gus Malzahn, the former Tulsa offensive coordinator, put up crazy numbers there. Now the new Razorback offensive coordinator to help out Petrino. Great minds there in the offense. Defensive side of the ball, 10 defensive starters returning, led by Malcolm Shepard, second team SEC defensive tackle who anchors that defense.
10 defensive starters returning. I don't know if that's a good thing because that defense gave up 31 points a game last year and 4.5 yards per carry to opposing running backs. You can't win like that, and there's a reason why they didn't win. But up front, they're undersized. Usually don't see Arkansas having an undersized defensive line, but they're undersized. Vandy has a big defensive line than the Razorbacks. So that's one thing they have to improve on, getting stronger up front.
Should be very interesting. This team will probably score 42 a game, but might give up 47.
And I love their cornerbacks. They're small. Tallest one is 5'11", but they're fast and they can play the ball. So all they have to do is get any kind of pressure on the quarterback. The secondary is solid, though. They have some talent on defense. Don't get me wrong, but up front they have to, hold their own and stop that run. But the secondary, I like, led by cornerback Ramon Broadway. Awesome player. If you haven't seen him, pop in the Arkansas tape and check him out. He's a real good player.
Well, another guy I want to mention, back to the offensive side of the ball, I forgot to mention DeAnthony Curtis. Had some fumble issues, but I think he could step up, and of course it's always better to have a stable of running backs rather than one, so maybe he could help out Michael Smith, especially that he's small. But schedule-wise, they get Texas A&M and Dallas. A&M, an improving squad, and they're at Florida and at Ole Miss in consecutive weeks in October. Another brutal stretch for an SEC team.
Overall, they have a tough schedule. You got A&M. They have a real good quarterback in Gerard Johnson down there in Texas A&M. They're improving. They got to play Troy, which is a tough team in the Sun Belt Conference with a good defense. They have LSU, Florida, and Ole Miss on the road. This is a tough schedule for Petrino. But if they could get a few breaks, they have some talent, and with Mallett coming in, they could surprise some teams also in the SEC.